So we're going to be looking at the findings of the research and drilling down in a bit more detail into various individuals' experience of that research. So to start with, Louise and Jurg, Louise was a research associate and Jurg the researcher, are going to give us a really quick,
It will be.
whistle-stop tour of the headlines of the findings. Once we've done that, we've got until lunchtime to have a bit more detailed discussion, and we'll do that through panel discussion and through an opportunity for Q&A.
UD processes explored access for all dancers. Can it work for all dancers? So can it work for a codified form? The simple answer is yes. It worked within the research that we set up. It worked for the selected exercises that we worked with. We were able to establish participation and learning for all the dancers that were present. We developed a way of working together that was clear and that we could build on in subsequent classes. And actually, I think start to move faster with it as well. What we haven't tackled yet are exercises with intricate jumping and turning material that is so at the heart of a lot of ballet. I think once we've established a way of working together, we can progress into that, but every bit of vocabulary is an exploration to find out how do we do that. We made a start in both the professional as well as the grade 2 level. We went into it. Now, Dance B had this running, skipping, assemblée phrase at the end. We literally spent half an hour on the last day of filming getting into that. Not enough. However, within half an hour, we saw amazing stuff happening with the dancers, where I saw the dancers move in ways that I had not seen previously. So very hopeful that this can be developed and built on. We refined it to it's a run, stop. It's a skip. What is a skip? Find out what a skip is. An assemblée was a jumping into a puddle, making a bit splash. So we used the metaphor that we tried that all of the dancers could access it. But that is something that needs to be explored more and developed more. Careful with this clicker. No. Now. And I have to click here as well. Content, syllabus, and different interpretations of it. It was really encouraging to see that in the RAD syllabus there is flexibility built in. There are whole parts of it that are open to the teacher to shape the weight transfer exercise, for instance. That's a teacher choreography that they set. And we were able to access much of that with the dancers and develop different versions for all of the dancers, not just the disabled dancers. So they all had different ways of weight transfer and using that as a shared choreography. On the flip side, there was some self-censorship with some of the dancers. Once you have an established form that is there, they are very clever and notice immediately that's the proper ballet version. So to work with that is something that the whole educational principle of working towards variation and diversity that needs to be shared and built. We started with that, but for that to click with a dancer takes time. There were children that tended to opt for the standard version when I felt you actually have a much stronger individual version. But for them to appreciate that themselves is a lot of learning. The DVDs show standardized version by very strongly trained dancers. They're often also older than the age group that the material is geared for. So including variations in the DVD would actually be wonderful, whether they are disabled or non-disabled children. But if we also could include material for disabled children where they see their role models out there, there's another way of doing that. That would be really wonderful. Click again. This kind of seconds again a little bit what I've already said. There were shared aspects of form and function and aesthetics that were going through the group. There was an amazing sense of achievement, learning and dancing together, realizing what was feasible with an integrated group. Versus, well, it's not real ballet. That can come up really quickly. And I've had lots of moments also with the professionals where I got really excited by material that the dancers were performing. But an outside viewer might say, well, but it's not ballet, it's contemporary. So bringing it back to what is at the core of this form. Are there other ways of performing this particular movement principle? That's a long-term project, I believe. Didn't take it yet? Okay, now. Time. Again, we were successful within the parameters of working together these very intensive weeks, which really immerse the dancers in this process. That's a completely different challenge when you then have a dancer for half an hour a week or 3/4 of an hour a week. And you have to work towards that syllabus together at a shared pace. And I really understand teachers' trepidations in doing that. There are also teachers worry about, well, I can't spend time on this UD games. I really have to teach them the content of what they're going to be examined in. I want to counter that and saying, in the long run, I believe that a UD-informed approach teaches a student how to learn in this environment and be more independent in the learning process. So it may take time investment, but it will also come round and be beneficial for all of the dancers. We also had conversations about, can I dedicate my focus so much to one student in my class? Because that's usually the setup. It's not a 50-50 balance in most dance classes. It will never be, I think, or very rarely in your regular dance classes. Am I not taking time away from my non-disabled students that also need my support? So Linda suggested coaching classes in the way that she does coaching classes for students that are approaching an exam and having 10-15 minutes time to look at a particular transition, way of working in the class, variation work that then the student can take back into the classroom as well. So some methods of countering that have already been discussed. Well, the teachers themselves commented how the process benefited all the dancers in finding their individualized version and their best performance with this material. That again, this balance in the group, often making sure that non-disabled dancers really take this opportunity and find variations, pursue their interest with the material as well, building in these choices in choreographic ways, especially that part of the syllabus where that is possible. That validates the disabled dancers' choices as well when we see, oh, I'm doing it this way, I'm doing it that way. And that's even more fun when you then can exchange material like we saw with the drop and join process. There is, of course, still lingering there the teachers worry about, is this going to be acceptable for an assessment? How will it be viewed at that moment? The dancers themselves commented on how they enjoyed and benefited working together as a peer group, and they were very tight. And these were long days, 10 till 4 o'clock. Yeah? They were at it, and they were stellar at working and supporting each other in that process as well. There was a difference in age, there was a difference in experience with ballet, and I still felt the class was able to work with that span within the age group. When we were filming, I already mentioned there was a tangible pressure on getting it right in that moment. Not so much for assessment, but I wanted the dancers to look good if we want to publish this material online. Not that 5 years from now they go like, oh my God, no, I can't believe what I did there. Yeah. So, and that's a discussion that we also had with the dancers and the parents in particular. Just going back again to benefits for the non-disabled dancers, we saw such a significant change in the readiness and willingness of the non-disabled students to play with movement, to access their creative side, to contribute their own choices of material into the process. Something that some of them, when I ask them, oh, can you show me a reach into space? They were like, petrified. And by the end of the process, they were ready with suggestions and coming in with their own ideas. Okay. There's a use of language that is informed by universal design that also has a disability awareness in it. So some of that language is, we need to learn. What are the appropriate terms to talk about each other, to refer to different people in the room? Are we normal? Are we average? Are we disabled? Are we able-bodied? Are we non-disabled? What are the terms that we're using here? So that's something to be learned, and there's knowledge out there of how we do that. It's also that thing with language. It keeps changing. It's a moving target, and being sensitive and ready to learn and listen is an important part of this. Other names are part of that I developed for my own process. I'm not precious about them, so I call it drop and join. Some people said, I don't really like that. So, well, you can call it take it or leave it, or find another name for it. As long as the students know what they're supposed to be doing at that moment, that's going to be good enough. And then there's, of course, also there's French terminology in ballet. And I like to use Laban-informed descriptions of the movements that open up that terminology so that different dancers can find ways of performing the same intention, the same form and function. So like jump into a puddle, the assemblée. For children that work, for another group I might unpack it in a different way, but use everyday language for this description, and that is still very much open to the teacher how they do that. Language is important, but also demonstrations are important. If I keep demonstrating the same exercise in the same way as a teacher, I am setting a standard phrase. So I have to keep challenging myself in the demonstrations to change it. I'm going to show it in this narrow position, but you have your narrow positions, but the phrase is this. Yeah? I'm going to do my turn, but you have your own turns, your own reach at that moment. You do yours. I'm going to do Chloe's today. I'm going to do Amber's today. Yeah, but you know what you'll be doing at that moment. So demonstrations and language, opening up and not standardizing it as a teacher is an important part of the process. The process boosted the ambitions of the teachers themselves. They saw the dancers in a different light and said, oh, yeah, she can do that. I can ask for more. I see possibilities there. The dancers realized ambitions where they said, I've learned something here. I'm going to go to my school teacher where we do dance and actually going to show them all the different other things that I can do that I was never asked to do in the classroom, or I haven't volunteered it yet. There is, however, a lack of role models of disabled artists and teachers in the classroom, and that's something that we're acutely aware of, that it's very non-disabled driven in terms of the leadership. And that is something to be tackled. And G-Dance did a really wonderful summer school with disabled artists doing a peer tutoring based on the universal design approach and messing with the methodology and seeing how that could be relevant to their own practice so that they take ownership of it. If I have a moment, I'm going to say it. I've been in Moving Beyond in Rovereto with European dance companies in dance and disability, and I thought, wouldn't it be great if we could pair up specific young dancers with specific professional dancers, wheelchair users, leg amputees, visually impaired people. They share an affinity and they can learn from each other in a workshop. So it would be a very hand-picked group. It's like, there are role models out there, I just don't have access to them at all times, as another way of disseminating a shared and building a shared practice. Continued professional training. There is knowledge out there, there's knowledge to be acquired. Also developing a comfort zone. Yes, I've encountered it once now. I think I've got an idea. And start dabbling with it in your own teaching environment. But then also sharing with other teachers who are in the same situation, exchanging best practice, coming back to people who have experience with it, and building it as a resource, I think, will be an important process.
Okay, so I was looking more at the kind of local infrastructure and the logistics around how to make this happen and how to kind of sustain what we've started and keep kind of building on that, and some kind of tools and tips and guidance, I suppose, for what we found out. So the first one, was about the information and the reassurance for the parents that may want to access ballet classes. We just feel it's so important that parents are sharing information, that the parent feels that they're informed about the content of the class and that they're going to be supported by the teacher within that environment, so that there's a really clear dialogue between the teacher who's running the class and the parent, and that's an ongoing conversation about the developments of that child in that setting. Part of what we discovered was that the peer support was really invaluable for the children, for the parents who have also now got a network where they're talking to each other, and for the teachers that we work with in the local area. Some of the benefits for the children that participated were around new friendships. Some of those are still maintained today. An increased confidence in their ability to kind of generate material and make choices in the class, and also their increased physical development. One of the young dancers went to see her physio straight after the week of working with Jurg, and we had a really fantastic report back about how it had changed her alignment, how it had made her stronger, so the physio could really see the benefits of taking part in quite an intensive ballet week, but that evidence is really great to see that it can really strengthen that dancer. So this one is much more about what we might need to set up in terms of our working in the local area, and we created a dancer information pack. So when we were working with the dancers, we were working out what types of equipment they might use, how they might use them. Do they use them at the bar, or how they might work in the floor, how they might use, what equipment they might use for travelling across the space. So we were kind of logging that, and although that might change, as Jurg says, as the dancer grows and develops, that information is really important to share with a local dance school teacher, so we can already exchange some information that says, here's some tips of what we've discovered and explored that they can then take into the studio themselves. We work with a team of dance support workers who would ultimately go in and support the whole class setting. We don't want the dance support worker to be seen as the helper to the disabled child. That is not what this is about. It was more about access for all in the class, and that the dance support worker works across the class setting to enable participation for everybody. And the dance support worker acted as a bridge. So they bridge that relationship between the ballet teacher, the parent, the child, and their access to the class setting. We also recognise that there's training for the dance support workers, many of us from a contemporary dance background, to understand the ballet context in which the dance support worker is going into. We don't necessarily have the same vocabulary, so it's training for that access worker as well to understand the ballet setup. We talked about time, and Jurg mentioned a coaching class. This was something that Linda actually suggested herself as a way of having time outside of her regular back-to-back classes to explore and have time with the children to work out what was needed. So exploring UD methods in the class, but also having time outside of the class as a separate coaching class. And again, this isn't just for disabled people as the remedial class or the special needs class that would be set up. We feel it's really beneficial for any young person entering any dance genre for the first time, that they need to understand the language, the vocabulary, the way that pliés might be done, and then there's also the access requirements for those children. So we're really excited that Linda came up with this concept, and we're going to kind of be working to look at how we can set that up in the longer term. Again, we've touched on this, but about a nervousness from some of the teachers that we work with locally around, well, what is acceptable? What will get examined? What will an examiner look at? And is that going to pass? You know, none of the teachers want to set a child up to fail. Nobody wants that, to put that child through that exam, set up, and it not happen. So there is that kind of nervousness locally with the people that we're working with, is how can we take those children through to that next level, and so they pass and move through the grading system. And as Jurg was kind of focusing on the kind of pedagogy in the studio and the learning and the teaching process of VUD, we were very much more looking at beyond what happens in the studio, beyond, we've got to get young people to the studio in the first place. So about setting the criteria for the class, so our local dance schools, what are the criteria for young people to come, and how inclusive are these for a diverse range of participants? It's really important that the local dance schools now make their offer clear to the wider community. Also about their marketing and advocacy for that locally, to make sure we do reach more children. Now that we've developed some skills locally, how can we keep that momentum going through marketing and advocacy of the work and the communication of that? We also need to look, and I'm sure lots of people encounter this, around the physical access just to get into the building. Some schools have a step in, or they don't have an accessible toilet, or they don't have a door wide enough for a certain type of wheelchair, or there's loads of kind of just physical access challenges that people have to kind of work through, and that is something not to forget about as well when we're setting up sessions. Is it something we really need to consider? So there's a huge network of dance schools out there, huge, and we want to be able to signpost children who come to us and say, we want to do ballet. We need to signpost them, but we need to make sure people are ready as well. So it is a two-way thing. And we also need to address funding issues to make some of this happen locally, but also it's a huge conversation I think we'll come to later on, because funding is preventing access at times for people to continue with their dancing, or to get to the studio, or to be in class. And I feel really strongly that everyone deserves the opportunity to access dance. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.